A 5-year-old boy walked into a biker bar carrying a teddy bear and asked the roughest men in town why his mommy wouldn't hug him anymore. What happened next broke every heart in that room. Before we dive into the story, make sure to smash subscribe because tomorrow we have an extra special story for you that will blow your mind. The Iron Wolf Bar wasn't a place for children. Smoke hung thick in the air, pool balls cracked against each other, and men with skull tattoos and leather vests lined the bar. It was 3 p.m. on a Tuesday when the front door creaked open and tiny footsteps echoed across the wooden floor. Every conversation stopped. 20 pairs of eyes turned to see a small boy, maybe 5 years old, standing in the doorway. He wore a Superman t-shirt that was too big for him, grass-stained jeans, and held a worn teddy bear tight against his chest. His blonde hair stuck up in messy spikes, and his blue eyes were red from crying. Marcus, the chapter president of the Road Warriors, was the first to move. The 6'4" giant with arms covered in tattoos slowly set down his beer and walked toward the child. "Hey there, little man," Marcus said, his gravelly voice gentler than anyone had ever heard it. "You lost?" The boy looked up at him without fear. "My name is Ethan. I need to ask you something." "Okay, Ethan, what do you need to ask?" What came next made every hardened criminal in that bar feel something break inside their chest. "Why won't my mommy hug me anymore?" Ethan asked, his voice barely a whisper. "She just lies in bed and won't wake up. I tried being really good. I cleaned my room and ate all my vegetables, but she still won't hug me." Marcus dropped to one knee, bringing himself down to the boy's level. Behind him, the other bikers exchanged dark looks. They all knew what this probably meant. "How long has your mommy been sleeping, buddy?" Marcus asked carefully. Ethan counted on his tiny fingers. "3 sleeps. I'm really hungry, and the cereal's gone." Big Mike, the club's sergeant-at-arms, cursed under his breath and headed for the door. "I'm calling 911. "Wait," Marcus commanded. Something about this didn't add up. "Ethan, where's your daddy?" "He went away in a police car a long time ago. Mommy said he was being bad." Marcus's jaw tightened. "And nobody else lives with you? No grandma or auntie?" Ethan shook his head. "Just me and Mommy and Mr. Whiskers." He held up the teddy bear. "Where do you live, Ethan?" Marcus asked. "The yellow apartment with the broken stairs. Number 12. I know because I'm learning numbers." Every biker in that bar knew those apartments. It was the worst complex in town, where the police rarely went and drug dealers ran the hallways. The fact that this tiny boy had walked 6 blocks through that neighborhood alone was a miracle. Razor, the club's enforcer, stood up so fast his chair fell over. "We're going there right now." "No," Marcus said, and his word was law in the club. "We do this. Smart. Doc, you're coming with us." Doc wasn't actually a doctor, but he'd been a combat medic in Iraq before a roadside bomb took his left leg and sent him home with nightmares. He grabbed the medical bag he always kept behind the bar. "Spider Tank, you're with us," Marcus continued. "Everyone else stays here, and someone get this kid some food." Within seconds, Ethan was sitting on a bar stool with a burger and fries in front of him. He ate like he hadn't seen food in days, which was probably true. The bikers watched in silence, rage building in their eyes. Marcus knelt beside Ethan again. "We're going to go check on your mommy, okay? But I need you to stay here with my friends. They'll take good care of you." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "Will you make her wake up? I miss her hugs." "We'll do everything we can, buddy. I promise." 4 road warriors on motorcycles racing through the bad part of town drew attention, but nobody was stupid enough to get in their way. They pulled up to the yellow apartment building, and the smell hit them before they even got inside. Broken glass crunched under their boots as they climbed to the 2nd floor. The door to apartment 12 was slightly open. A child's drawings were taped to the walls of the hallway, stick figures of a little boy and a woman holding hands under a rainbow. Marcus pushed the door open. The smell got worse. The living room was clean but sparse, just a couch, a small TV, and toys neatly arranged in a corner. On the coffee table was an empty bottle of pills. "Ethan's mom is in here," Doc called from the bedroom. She was young, maybe 25, with the same blonde hair as her son. She lay peacefully in bed, but her skin had the wrong color, and she'd been gone for days. On the nightstand was a note in shaky handwriting. Marcus picked it up and read, I'm sorry, Ethan. Mommy's very sick and very tired. Be a good boy. Someone will take care of you. I love you forever. Tank punched a hole in the wall. Spider had to walk outside. Doc checked for any signs of life, even though they all knew it was pointless. Marcus called 911, then made another call. Cheryl, it's me. We've got a situation. A little boy whose mom... Yeah, he's at the bar right now. Can you come? Cheryl was Marcus's wife, a kindergarten teacher who had been trying to have children for 10 years without success. She arrived at the bar in 15 minutes, took one look at Ethan, and her mothering instincts kicked in immediately. The police and paramedics arrived at the apartment. The investigation would later reveal that Ethan's mother, Jessica, had been battling severe depression after her husband went to prison for dealing drugs. She had lost her job, couldn't afford her medication, and saw no way out of the downward spiral. The pills she took were sleeping medication. She'd wanted to go peacefully, probably hoping someone would find Ethan quickly. But in a building where people minded their own business and screams were common, nobody had checked on them. Back at the bar, Ethan had fallen asleep in Cheryl's arms, clutching Mr. Whiskers. The social worker who arrived 2 hours later looked nervously at the room full of bikers. I'm here for the minor child, Ethan Morrison, she announced. Where are you taking him? Marcus asked. Emergency foster placement. There's a group home with an opening. Every biker in the room stood up at once. The social worker took a step back. A group home? Cheryl's voice was ice. He just lost his mother. You're going to throw him in with a bunch of older kids who'll eat him alive? It's the only placement available, the social worker insisted. No, it's not, Marcus said. He looked at his wife and she nodded. We'll take him. You're not certified foster parents. There's a process. Then start the process, Marcus growled. But that boy doesn't leave here without us. The social worker looked around at 20 bikers who clearly weren't going to budge. I'll need to make some calls. While she stepped outside, the Road Warriors held an emergency meeting. In their 30-year history, they'd never voted on anything this fast or this unanimous. By the time the social worker returned, she found out that the Road Warriors Motorcycle Club had just established a children's fund with $50,000 in it, funded by every member emptying their savings. We've done the background checks, the social worker said, bewildered. Marcus and Cheryl Thompson, you're both clean. She's a teacher, you own a construction company. But this is highly irregular. Lady, Big Mike said, nothing about that kid's life has been regular. Maybe it's time for that to change. What happens next will remind you that sometimes angels wear leather and ride Harleys. Stay tuned to see what happens next. If you're enjoying the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Emergency placement was approved for 48 hours while the paperwork was processed. Ethan woke up in a real bed in Marcus and Cheryl's house, confused and calling for his mommy. Cheryl held him while he cried, and Marcus stood in the doorway feeling more helpless than he'd ever felt in any bar fight. She's not coming back, is she? Ethan asked in that way children do when they already know the answer. No, buddy, she's not, Cheryl said softly, but she loved you very much. She just got very sick. My daddy said people who love you don't leave, Ethan whispered, but he left. And now Mommy left too. Did I do something bad? Marcus couldn't take it anymore. He sat on the bed and pulled the tiny boy into his massive arms. Listen to me, Ethan. You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups have problems that are too big for them to handle. Your mommy loved you more than anything in the world. And you know what? You've got a whole bunch of new people who care about you now. Over the next few days, the Road Warriors showed up in force. Ethan needed clothes. 20 bikers descended on target, terrifying other shoppers as they filled carts with everything a 5-year-old could need. The house needed to be child-proofed. The entire club spent a weekend installing safety locks and building the most elaborate treehouse the neighborhood had ever seen. But the real challenge came when Child Services insisted on a home visit. The social worker, Mrs. Patterson, pulled up to find 15 motorcycles in the driveway. This isn't appropriate, she said immediately. A biker gang is no place for a child. Cheryl stepped forward. With all due respect, these men saved Ethan's life. He could have starved in that apartment, but he was brave enough to ask for help. And they answered. Be that as it may, she was interrupted by Ethan running out of the house. Uncle Mike, Uncle Razor, did you bring Mr. Whiskers? Big Mike, who'd spent the night carefully washing and repairing the teddy bear, handed it to Ethan. "Good as new, little man." Mrs. Patterson watched the boy hug each biker, calling them uncle, completely fearless around men who made most adults nervous. She saw how they were careful with their language around him, how they'd all removed their more offensive patches, how they looked at him like he was made of spun gold. "I need to interview Ethan alone," she said. 20 minutes later, she came out looking stunned. "He told me about his new uncles teaching him to ride a bicycle, about Uncle Doc who checks his scraped knees, about Uncle Spider who reads him bedtime stories. He said, 'You're all his guardian angels who dress scary but are really nice.'" Marcus stepped forward. "Ma'am, I know what we look like, but every man here would die before letting anything happen to that kid. His mother trusted him to find help, and he found us. We're not letting him down." The foster care approval came through, but it was only the beginning. Ethan needed therapy to process his loss. The first therapist took one look at Marcus and almost refused to treat Ethan. The second one called child services with concerns about the environment. The third therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, was different. She rode a motorcycle herself and didn't flinch when Marcus walked in. "Ethan's drawn some pictures I'd like to show you," she said after their fourth session. The drawings showed stick figures on motorcycles surrounding a small figure. In every picture, the little figure was smiling. "He feels safe," Dr. Chen explained. "For the first time in his life, he has multiple adult figures who are consistent and protective. It's actually quite remarkable." The real test came when Ethan started kindergarten at Cheryl's school. The other parents whispered when Marcus dropped him off, leather vest and all. Some pulled their children away. But Ethan didn't notice. He was too busy showing everyone his new Spider-Man backpack that Uncle Tank had bought him. 2 weeks into school, Ethan got into his first fight. A bigger kid had been picking on a smaller girl, and Ethan had stepped in. "My uncles say you got to protect people who can't protect themselves," Ethan told the principal proudly, sporting a black eye. The principal called Marcus and Cheryl in for a conference. "While we appreciate Ethan's protective instincts, we can't have violence in school." Marcus leaned forward. "Did you punish the kid who was bullying the girl?" "Well, we didn't actually see, but you saw Ethan defending her and he's in trouble." The principal shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Thompson, I understand your organization has certain views on justice, but my organization?" Marcus's voice was dangerously quiet. "You mean my construction company? Or are you referring to my motorcycle club, where every member has passed criminal background checks to be around Ethan? Where half of us are veterans? Where we've raised $100,000 for children's charities in the last year?" Cheryl put a hand on her husband's arm. "What my husband is trying to say is that we're teaching Ethan to stand up for others, just like someone stood up for him. If that's a problem, perhaps we need to reconsider his placement at this school." The principal backpedaled quickly. Ethan's black eye was forgotten, and the bullying mysteriously stopped when word got out that the little kid with the biker family wasn't to be messed with. 6 months passed. The adoption paperwork was moving through the system slowly, but Ethan was thriving. He'd gained weight, laughed easily, and only had nightmares once a week instead of every night. The Road Warriors had become a constant presence in his life, teaching him everything from tying his shoes to basic bike maintenance. Then, Jessica's parents surfaced, Ethan's maternal grandparents, who hadn't seen their daughter in 3 years because they'd disowned her for marrying a drug dealer, suddenly wanted custody of their grandson. The court battle was brutal. The grandparents had money, lawyers, and a spotless reputation. They argued that a motorcycle club was no place for a child, that Ethan needed a normal family. The custody hearing was packed. 20 Road Warriors in full colors sat silently in the gallery. The grandparents' lawyer painted a picture of dangerous criminals corrupting an innocent child. Then, Cheryl's lawyer called witness after witness. Ethan's teacher testified about his improvement. Dr. Chen explained how his trauma was healing. Business owners talked about how the Road Warriors had renovated the children's wing at the hospital for free. But the most powerful testimony came from Ethan himself. The judge asked him in chambers where he wanted to live. "With Mom and Dad," Ethan said simply. "That's what I call Cheryl and Marcus now, and with all my uncles. They saved me when Mommy couldn't wake up. They're my family." "What about your grandparents?" the judge asked gently. Ethan thought carefully. I don't know them. But my uncles say family isn't just blood. Family is who shows up when you need them. My grandparents didn't show up. The Road Warriors did. The judge's decision took 3 weeks. In the end, she ruled that while the situation was unconventional, Ethan's best interests were served by staying with Marcus and Cheryl. The grandparents were granted supervised visitation if they chose to pursue it. They never did. The adoption was finalized on a sunny Tuesday in September. The entire Road Warriors MC escorted Ethan to court, 20 motorcycles strong. He wore a tiny leather vest with a special patch, Prospect, the same one adult members wore when they were earning their place in the club. You're officially Ethan Thompson now, the judge told him with a smile. Ethan grinned. Can I get a motorcycle when I'm bigger? The entire courtroom laughed. Marcus ruffled his hair. We'll start you on a bicycle and work our way up. Outside the courthouse, the Road Warriors had arranged a surprise. A custom bicycle, painted to match Marcus's Harley, complete with leather saddlebags and chrome handlebars. Every Road Warrior needs their own ride, Big Mike explained. As Ethan rode his new bike in circles around the parking lot, surrounded by his leather-clad family, local news crews captured the moment. The story of the little boy who walked into a biker bar and found a family went viral. Donations poured in for the Road Warriors Children's Fund, which they used to help other kids in crisis. But the most important part of the story happened 2 years later, on a quiet Sunday morning. Ethan, now 7, was helping Marcus work on a motorcycle in the garage. Dad, Ethan said, using the title that had come naturally after the adoption. Yeah, buddy? I miss my first mommy sometimes. Is that okay? Marcus put down his wrench and pulled Ethan into his lap. Of course it is. You can love your first mommy and love us too. Hearts are amazing things. They can hold love for lots of people. She would have liked you, Ethan said confidently. She always said angels were watching over me. She just didn't know they'd be wearing leather and riding motorcycles. Marcus had to wipe his eyes. You know what, buddy? I think she did know. I think that's why you weren't afraid to walk into our bar that day. Your mommy made sure you found us. Ethan nodded, satisfied with this explanation. Uncle Razor is teaching me to play pool next week. Absolutely not, Cheryl called from the kitchen. You're 7. 8 is better? Try 18. Ethan giggled and went back to helping with the motorcycle, grease already on his nose, completely at home in this strange and wonderful family that had claimed him as their own. The Road Warriors still meet at the Iron Wolf Bar every Friday night, but now there's a sign on the door. Family friendly until 8 p.m. Because you never know when another lost child might need to find their angels. Sometimes the people who look the scariest have the softest hearts. Sometimes a tragedy becomes a miracle. And sometimes a little boy looking for a hug finds an entire army of protectors instead. Ethan is 15 now, honor roll student, star of his school's wrestling team, and already planning to prospect for the Road Warriors when he turns 18. He still carries Mr. Whiskers to every important event, hidden in his backpack. He volunteers at the Children's Crisis Center the club founded, telling scared kids that everything will be okay, that sometimes help comes from unexpected places. And every Mother's Day, he visits 2 graves, one for Jessica Morrison, who loved him enough to make sure he found help, one for Margaret Chen, the elderly neighbor who saw him leave the apartment that fateful day and, instead of stopping him, whispered a prayer and let him go find his destiny. Because sometimes the greatest act of love is letting someone find their own angels, even if those angels ride Harleys and wear skull patches and look nothing like the pictures in children's books. The Road Warriors Children's Fund has helped over 200 kids in crisis, but Ethan remains their first and favorite success story. The little boy who asked why mommy wouldn't hug him anymore and found 100 new reasons to believe in love. If you enjoyed this story of unlikely heroes and the power of chosen family, please subscribe and click on one of the 2 amazing stories on your screen. Tomorrow, we have another incredible tale that will restore your faith in humanity.